Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Green Tea Podcast. It's your favorite astrology girlies. And guess what? Today's episode is all about Gemini season. Woo! I mean,
Yes.
FYI, if y'all didn't know, I'm a Gemini. So it's my season. So, Emma, we're going to start off with the astrology forecast. What is in for the Gemini season of 2025?
Yeah. So happy birthday to all the Geminis out there, especially Grace, our favorite Gemini. So Gemini season runs from the end of May. I mean, it just started a few days ago, but the end of May until sort of the middle end of June ish. Not middle, end of June. And some core themes that we're going to be exploring in today's episode and that will come up during Gemini seasons are things like communication, language, learning, our thought processes, or quite frankly, our thought patterns and like the stories that we tell ourselves, as they say, as well as some other behavioral things like restlessness and mental stimulation, even some of the more darker things like manipulation of words and lying and how that plays into the archetype of Gemini. But yeah.
Wow. So I'm looking at famous Geminis, and we have Marilyn Monroe, we have Trump,
Mhm.
Angelina Jolie, Johnny Depp, who, Mary-Kate Olsen, Naomi Campbell. So a lot of people who are famous Geminis.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean Marilyn Monroe is a classic example. She was able to go from that, the girl next door to one of the most famous icons in the history of entertainment. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that this is interesting, right? Because obviously there can be people who are celebrities, of course, and famous of all signs. But I do see how, especially in things like entertainment, you could see a lot of maybe Gemini or like air energy, because a lot of these people are famous because what they're actors or artists of some sort, politicians. I know you mentioned Trump, so politicians or people who a lot of their success is created by or it's found through using their voice and their expression. It's what they
mm,
communicate, whether it's just, only through their words and verbally or through writing or through even like embodying a character, like you're an actor speaking is very much a part of that as well, obviously. So yeah, that makes sense.
interesting. Well, I thought I love being a Gemini, but then whenever I talk to some people, they're like, "Oh, Geminis get a bad rep." Like, what is the bad rep
Yeah.
in your opinion?
Yeah, sure. No, so it's true that Gemini and certain other signs like Scorpio and sometimes Virgo can also get a bit of a bad rap on the internet. I think that for Gemini, the reason that this happens is because the symbol and the sign of Gemini is the twins. And one of the themes that Gemini rules, if you will, or embodies is duality. And so a lot of people will take this to be, oh, Gemini is two-faced. I'm sure you've heard that before. And so I think that's a lot of like the root of where people get this negative image of Gemini from, that
Mm,
like, oh, they're two-faced, and that like there might be a nice side of these people, but there's always a dark side and like a side that's like
mm.
lying and manipulative and all this stuff. Which, you know what, let's clear that up right now. Which is bullshit. So no, it's of course, yeah, they can have a penchant for lying, and they might have a way with words, if you want to put it that way. They can be wordsmiths and excellent storytellers. But I
Mm,
think really, Gemini is a chameleon. They're able to, especially in communication and language, they're able to bridge like all different types of like people or aspects of a conversation. They're very adaptable and like
mm.
versatile, whether that's in the words that they're speaking, the topics they're conversing on, or even just like in their life in general. Like they can be very flexible in their minds. So it's very common for them to maybe show one side of themselves or appear dominantly one way and then shift into something else. Um, and in some capacity, that's not a bad thing on Gemini's part at all. But
Mm.
I think like for any sign, I think that people can have a personal bone to pick with it. Like if say that you're somebody who's dated a Gemini or you had a friend that was a
Yeah.
Gemini and they hurt you, and then you're reading online, oh, Gemini is two-faced, whatever, you're gonna be like, yeah, fuck Geminis, they're all two. Yeah, because you have a personal, story or a personal hurt there. So it's easy to fit that narrative with your experience. So yeah, I think that that's kind of where that comes from in a
Mm.
nutshell. But just to clear it up, doesn't mean that they're all
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
I think before I even learned anything about astrology when I was in Korea, I even had this on film. So when I was on the show, the rap show,
Yeah.
they asked me like who's Grace, and I always describe myself as a chameleon,
Mm,
like or a rainbow, or whatever animals that are able to shapeshift because I think I can do everything. Like why
sure.
not?
Yeah.
And these days I've just been feeling so bored in life. I literally was in the city Monday to Tuesday. I was like, had this like spicy life, and then I came home and I'm like, oh, I'm so bored. Like,
Mm,
I'm working on this big project, but then this and that is like, I just want to do something that's fun and exciting in life. Otherwise, I'm
yeah.
like, ugh, like I just want to die. Like, why am I here? Kind of
Totally.
thing. So,
Mhm.
I think I don't know. Maybe that's a classic Gemini side of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that one of the things that Gemini shows us is that we all contain multitudes and that there are different sides of us in general, like that will come out to play at different times or that are activated more in different settings or around different people. But also it's even just the idea or the understanding that we can have multiple interests. We
Mm.
can have multiple interests or multiple things that we like to do. I do think that Gemini sun, like you have a Gemini sun sign, Gemini and any placement that's especially prominent in your chart, it can indicate someone who is designed to do multiple things at once. Like you're able to multitask and kind of, you enjoy that stimulation. And so that's one of the things that I think we're talking about where Gemini does have this thing where they like to be stimulated and learning and active all the time, especially
Mhm.
in the mind. And so when that's not happening, they can start to feel restless, maybe bored, and like, oh, like I need something to keep me going. And um, yeah,
Well, let me
so
ask
it
this.
makes
What
sense.
is what is the mind of somebody who wants to do one thing? Because I'm like, if you do one thing, like you're our grandpa, like you're a baby, like,
Oh.
you know? Are you like that
Well,
or like?
no, I don't think that I don't think my mind works in that way where I only think about like one thing. So if we
Mhm.
think about like the actual mind, I guess, versus the essence and the sun of Gemini, like there are people, for example, like, okay, so for example, like people who I know that are, I've met a few Aries or Scorpio who they have this thing where, like, when they're focused on something, or even if they're not focused on it, they can become focused on it. And it's like one track mind, like, boom, boom,
Mhm.
boom. Like, every thought they have is focused on that. Every action that they take is in pursuit of like this one goal or figuring out this one thing. And they obsess about it,
Yeah.
especially Scorpio. Like, until they get there, that is it. Everything else just like disappears from their mind.
Mhm.
Responsibilities, who has them? Not me, girl. I'm focused on this one thing. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so I think that in that respect, like that's the way that I would articulate that. But I think I don't think that I would describe myself like that, but I also am like you. I'm an air sign, and I also have Mercury, which is the planet that Gemini rules. It's the planet of communication. I also have Mercury in an air sign, like you do. So that means that the way that we think and the way that we express ourselves naturally can be kind of like flighty and be very involved mentally in different things. I think Gemini just gets um, the most. Gemini is generally the sign that most broadly and
Yeah.
can, yeah, like they can encompass that, I suppose. um
It's like our fragments are everywhere.
yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a very scattered and like fragmented energy, but again, I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way in every sense. But if you are working on something that requires stillness or that requires stability and consistency, then obviously the Gemini energy, like creating chaos and going all over the place, can disrupt a little bit of that. So I know that I use this as an example like every single episode, but it just fits. You and I are very similar in some ways. We're both very talkative. We have really great conversations. Like there's a cerebral connection that I think we have that really
Mhm.
makes sense and it's engaging for us. But I know that we have also spoken at length about how you can be a little bit more like action taking and like here's a million things and here's the thing and let's do it. And I'm like, hold on, let me just like have a plan and like think it out first, and then when it's ready, I'll move.
Mm.
And so you can see where there's that kind of not necessarily conflict, but there's just a difference there in the way that we navigate things. And so Gemini can be a little bit more quick in the mind, but also can be prone to also acting quickly. I think because you have Aries as well as Gemini, there is Gemini that's quick in the mind and thinking of ideas and projects and all this stuff and different perspectives. And then the Aries is what gives you that oomph
Mm.
to take action on whatever that thing is. So you might not really prefer to stay in one place for too long. Um,
Oh
But yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
especially conversations I've noticed I get very agitated if somebody's like adding extra details. I'm like, what is the point? You know?
Yes.
Get to the point. I don't need extra
100%.
details. So it's like,
100%.
yeah. So let's get into like how we can read our charts. I know you said I have Gemini in many different places, Mercury, eighth house. What does it mean when we dissect our charts for those who are listening? Who has Gemini?
Yeah. So, to if you want to look at your own chart, when you pull up your chart, you obviously go online, you look up a natal chart calculator. It'll ask you to put in your information, and then you'll have this circular chart generated
Mm.
for you. So to figure out Gemini and Gemini influence and where it is in your chart, you just want to look at the chart, and on the outer like ring of it, you'll usually see the symbols or the words like the names Gemini, Aries, Taurus. So you just go where you find Gemini, and then you look and you see what house it's in. I was like, do I have a hold on.
Hmm.
I'm gonna try to show you guys mine. So
Hmm.
I have a printout of my chart. I should use this for every episode.
Oh wow.
But this is my chart. So I would essentially want to look, like you can see right here is the Aries symbol. I think, is that the Aries symbol? I can't even see it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, so this right here is the Gemini symbol. So for me, Gemini is in my second, and it's also here in my third house. So that's where you would look. The numbers right here are what show you the house that it's in. Um, Sorry, that was really long-winded, but yeah, so that's how you'll find where it is in your chart, and then obviously the rest of it will tell you if you have any specific placements in Gemini, like Sun Gemini, Mercury Gemini. I don't have any in Gemini, so I can't show you, but you will see it online if you look. Yeah.
Okay, so you told me we're gonna get into my chart.
Yes.
Go ahead. What does Gemini mean in my chart?
Totally. So anybody that's been following us and watching us for a while knows that Grace is a Gemini. She has Gemini Sun and Gemini Mercury, and it sits in her eighth house. And the eighth house is the house of what is taboo. It's our shared resources and shared power. It's also things like death, endings, grief, cycles. It's not necessarily the happiest house, I would say, but it's very, very, very important. Because as we know in life, everything moves in cycles and endings occur quite frequently. And it's what allows us to evolve into like our next iteration, shall we? So when you have Gemini, Mercury, or Sun in the eighth house, you can be somebody who is very like, you have a very deep mental focus. You can be really intense and investigative when you are like learning about something. Um, and sometimes there can be an aspect of like being driven by a sense of intrigue, like, oh, I just have to know what this is about, like even if it doesn't necessarily serve me, like I'm just so intrigued because maybe there's something taboo here or just something that we avoid. So obviously you have your true crime YouTube
Hmm.
channel, and it's become very successful, and that makes a lot of sense to me because the things that you're talking about are things like death, like oh my god, death, like how dare we
Hmm.
talk about something like that, especially like homicide and murder and things like that, or sexual assault or any type of sexual trauma if they're involved in those cases. Like you're not afraid to dig into the details and really find like, hey, what's the information that I need to know, and then share it with the world. And so what you end up doing is you can give a voice to the things that other people avoid and the unseen and what we try to hide, what we feel ashamed about, or what we feel is not appropriate or taboo, which is the eighth house. So you give a voice to that. And that's like very much a domain of having these signs specifically in the eighth house. You also, I know, have shared experiences, like psychic experiences, or like doing the theta healing certification that you did a while back. And so when you have the Sun and Mercury in the eighth house, you can also be somebody who has the ability to speak to or through the unseen or the occult realms. So this deep
Hmm.
psychic potential, or even like mediumship potential as well. Not everybody will resonate with that, but it can be found in people who have these placements in the eighth house. um, the thing though is that, like I said, you are really interested in diving deep into these things, but there can be times where the investigative nature of what you're doing is coming from a place of fear or control or like self-preservation, meaning like you might want to know things because you believe or feel that the more information that you know, the safer you are. Like no one's going to catch you off guard with something. You can sense someone's, you know what someone's going to do 5 steps before they do it. Or like, when people talk about when they catch somebody in a lie and then they ask the person and the person's telling them like a false story, it's like you're like, oh well, I already have the knowledge because I already did the digging, so I already know that you're lying. So it's like, prevents you from getting blindsided in that moment by that.
Mm.
So there can be a little bit of that, of like wanting to know, or quite simply because the eighth house also represents like I said, it's things that we hide, so it could also be secrets. Knowing people's secrets is valuable information. That's something like even like blackmail, like we see that happen in the world all the time, where people will go to great lengths to conceal knowledge or any type of receipts that might show that they have been acting in a questionable manner, right? But if you are the person who has discovered that or who holds that secret, you have now a lot of power, which is another domain of the eighth house. And with power comes a certain sense of control, right? Because someone, let's say they're threatening to blackmail you, they have now a sense of control over you and what you do because they have this information, this secret that you maybe had tried to hide or, whatever. So, yeah, in short, I don't want to keep, going on a rant here, but in short, that's kind of what it is. And in a more positive aspect, I guess, you can be somebody who maybe seeks intimacy through this like exchange of like deep truths and like vulnerability and like sharing secrets. Like it might help you to feel closer to people and like get to know them better when you're able to open up to them and exchange in that way. And you can really hold a lot of like immense power with when your voice is used with integrity and like precision. Your words carry a lot of weight and they're very important. I mean, I think that regardless of your sign, obviously, but that's one of the strengths that you have in
Yeah.
being that. So yeah, I don't know.
So I started my YouTube channel, I think 5 years ago during COVID, and I
Mm,
was so invested in like spirituality. I've never learned spirituality because I grew up Christian, and I'm like, oh my
okay.
gosh, like this opened up my eyes. And I dove
Yeah.
really deep into it, and then dove into true crime.
Mm,
Just learning about the mysteries and why people do the things that they do. And I had a really fun time with it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm so bored of it now, and I know I shouldn't be saying that, but I've been doing it for so long. It's like
yeah.
anytime I have like alien videos, I used to love to watch like ancient histories, aliens, all that theories. Now
Yeah.
it comes up and I'm like, I think I know everything. Like
Mm,
I'm kind of bored. What's the next thing that I can dive
mm,
into? So that's kind of the era that I am in right now. So again, yeah, one psychic told me like I am the type to always dive, like be successful at whatever I do, but I get bored quickly and I move on.
hmm.
So it's just so interesting how even with the psychics and with the astrology and how I feel inside, it's all related. So there's a little truth to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I can definitely relate to the secret thing. I do have this like a little, what do you call it? Like a little, what do you call that in sex where that a little kink?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not, this is not a sexual kink. This is more
Right.
like a intellectual kink I have.
Yes.
When I
Sure.
find out a certain information, I do feel powerful where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I know the secret about this person. They trust me.
Yes.
Where,
Exactly.
yeah, when it comes to like a
Right.
guy, like, oh, I know a lot of secret about this person. And when things, if in case things do turn south, I'm like, okay. Intellectually, I'm like, I'm already planning out what I could be doing in case they try to
Mm.
fuck me over. So,
Yes. Yeah.
but I feel like a lot of people operate that way, no?
Yes, I think that's a good point because the eighth house in general,
Yeah.
it rules like our instinct for self preservation,
Yeah.
meaning all of us as human beings are wired to like move away from scary stuff and discomfort and anything that's going to threaten our life. So we have naturally as humans like a self-protective mechanism where we want to like be on guard against danger. So yeah, to some degree like all of us are like this, where we have a survival instinct and we
Yeah.
have like a and little antenna up that's like, oh, is something weird going down
Hmm.
here? But I do think that there can be maybe certain people, just certain people's constitutions and also nurture, the way that you're raised and the life experiences that you have could also like exacerbate that. For example, if you experience a lot of trauma, you could become somebody who then develops, say, like really like extreme fear to the point where it becomes like paranoia. You know what I mean? Whereas like maybe the average person wouldn't experience it that intensely. Or if you have a certain like mental illness that runs in your family that, you know, experiences certain types of paranoid behavior, this feeling of danger is always around me. Then you might be more prone to the
Mm,
extremes of that. But yeah, I do think to some degree we all have eighth
yeah.
house stuff. Yeah.
All right, so getting into relationships, if you were to ever go on a date with the Gemini, Emma wrote, needs shared language, mental simulation, and humor, struggles with emotional depth, presence, or committed if not grounded, may
Hmm.
use intellect to dominate or invade intimacy. Interesting. Bonds through banter, wit, and verbal exchange, feels most loved when listened to, heard, and met mentally. I do
Hmm.
agree with that. I'm very like,
Okay.
when I go on a date, if I don't have mental or intellectual stimulation or connection, I'm like, what's the point?
Sure. Yeah, that's I think a pretty big one for most people that I meet who are Geminis, as well as air signs in general. I find, especially Aquarius and Gemini, like
Mm,
because the air signs for and just by the way to clarify this for anybody listening, the air signs Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, they are the element of air, and air rules our like mental faculties of all sorts. So that's why I wrote that down for Gemini, where in relationships, especially, one of the dominant ways that they connect is through conversation and shared stories, or where they feel like their words matter to somebody, and somebody can receive their words and then reciprocate with conversation. Um, so yeah, a lot of like mental, like that type of energy. But if you think about air, right, air is very fast moving, it can be very scattered. And so that is one of the things that I really wanted to point out here. It would probably be like the second one that I wrote there, which is like struggles with like kind of emotional depth or presence or commitment if there isn't um, any grounding. And so what
mm,
I mean by that is because Gemini can have such an active mind, and they're always thinking about things at the same time that they might be having a conversation, it can be difficult for them to be present and to listen to what someone else is saying, especially if it's not as quick of a conversation as maybe they want to be having. And so that's what I mean by there can be difficulty with being present in that moment unless you are
mm,
grounded and you are able to kind of curb that, like you're able to stay focused, if you will, um amidst all of that. The other thing that I want to point out, especially in the context of relationships, is this can also be extended emotionally, where sometimes Gemini likes to keep its mind occupied and likes to stay on the surface of a conversation in order to avoid feeling its emotions. And
mm.
it's always trying to think its way and solve its way out of its problems, or, oh, I'll just jump to something else and that will solve my problem. Or like, oh, I'll just avoid this feeling and I'll just like talk it out, or I'll like vent it out to somebody, or I'll just do something else, and it'll solve my problem. And so they can have a lot of discomfort with stillness and not moving around all the time. Or this can, not always, but it can extend to relationships. Say that you have Venus in Gemini. You might also, be somebody who in relationships you experience this restlessness. And if you get bored, or if you feel like the mental connection isn't there, or if the relationship becomes deep enough where it's starting to ask you to develop emotional intimacy instead of just this like mental connection, you might be inclined to jump ship and be like, oh, I'm bored, or like, oh, it's just getting messy now, when in reality, it might not be. It could be, but it also might not be. It could just be the discomfort with the being with the emotions. So, yeah,
Yeah, I think that especially my chart, I don't have a lot of water, and that
yeah,
maybe that also adds to it. I
sure.
feel like all my life I interpret emotions 70% through my head and 30% through the body, which is
Yeah.
supposed to be more natural.
Mm,
So when I have a situation, I'm just like thinking it and not really feeling it. It could kind of backfire on me later on because you need to really filter the emotion, but I can't. I don't know. That's just not how I was born. So if I feel
yeah.
angry, I analyze why am I angry? Well, should I get back at this person or should I not? Like, and then it just kind of goes away and it comes back later on. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting how Geminis might process emotions, and I'm just like so relating to all these notes.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way astrology is not scientific. Like, this is science.
You heard it here first, folks.
Uh,
That's a cosign, ladies and gentlemen. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever
Yeah.
dated a Gemini male?
I knew you were going to ask this. I was thinking about that. Okay, for whatever reason, I was in bed last night and I thought to myself, and Grace is going to ask me tomorrow if I've ever dated a Gemini man.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because we ask each other the same question. We ask that same
Yeah.
question every episode. I have, actually. The
Oh
first
wait,
person I
I
ever.
remember this bad story. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, listen, relationships exist for our growth, and I wasn't perfect either, but I did. Like, I did I did date a Gemini at one point. At one point, I was in a relationship with somebody who was a Gemini,
Mm.
and yeah, it didn't obviously last, but I can say that there were definitely some Gemini qualities that were present there. I do think that one of the things I was most attracted to in this person was their intellect.
Mm.
Um, this person was very intelligent, and we had really great conversations, and I felt like that was a very refreshing thing for me.
Mm.
I was a bit younger when this relationship happened, younger compared to now. So I think I've learned a lot about myself then. But he was very scattered. He was all over the place,
Mm.
and I don't
What do you
mean
mean?
that
Like
in a
when you
negative way.
talking or?
Yeah, when we were talking, but also in his behavior, like he was a very kind of
Mm.
erratic person in the way that he moved. I don't know what the rest of his chart looked like. And again, I don't say that to bash him in any way, because I think in some form it also mirrored back to me my own restlessness and like my own capacity to like run away from things when they become difficult, um, which I'd like to think that I have worked on and made some headway with
Mhm.
now. But yeah, um, he also did tell lies a lot, I
Mm.
have to say. Again, not trying to bash anybody, but there were some lies that were told, and a lot of deceit that went on in that regard, like verbal deceit. That's what I'm saying. Like it was
Mm.
a manipulation of words. It was telling me something that's obviously not true, or giving me false promises, or saying things that later I would find out that he never intended to follow through on, you know? So that was ultimately one of the biggest reasons why actually the relationship didn't work out. I was like, that's, I can't, that's not what I
Mhm.
want. Um, so yeah, but
Mm.
definitely a smart person, very funny as well. That's another thing that I haven't quite touched on yet, but Gemini is great with witty banter, and they can be very funny along with their
Mm.
opposite counterpart, Sagittarius. They're also known for their humor as well. But I found him to be funny as well, and I think to be able to make somebody laugh is so underrated of a trait, you know?
Mm. What do you
Yeah.
mean the opposite sign is a Sag?
Uh, Yeah, so every sign in astrology has a sister sign, and that's their sign, that's their opposite. So, just in astrology, the way the pairings work, Gemini's opposite is Sagittarius.
Mm.
And one of the things that they share is like humor. Humor, as in like humor. Okay, how do I say this? When I say humor, I mean that Gemini exhibits this and expresses this more so through like wit, like a good joke, or like a funny, but it's witty. It's like a, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Whereas Sagittarius, they also tell very good jokes, but it's, I don't know, it's a different type of
Mhm.
maybe
It's a
funny.
fire sign.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed that some Sagittarius people can make some kind of like worldly jokes. Like they're kind of like not philosophical, but almost like a weird, like not weird. I don't think it's weird. I love it, but it's maybe not as cut and dry as like you would think, or I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that I need to think about that a little bit more, but,
Mhm.
and how to articulate it is what I mean. But, yeah, they share that quality of funniness, humor,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
just, yeah, entertainment in that way, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to comment about one of the best things of Gemini, in my opinion,
Yeah.
is that I think that as me, Geminis kind of have a way of being a switch.
Okay.
So, if I go into a room full of people and I need to be confident, I can like switch that. If I don't need to, I turn it off. I go to another room and I feel like, oh, I need to be very kind or a different energy in this room, then flip that switch and that becomes me for that day. So I feel like I'm able to turn whatever sides of me on whenever I need to, and it benefits me. And then when I come home, I turn those off and I'm Grace at the end of the day.
Mm,
So I think at the end of the day, having a lot of those personalities or being able to flip those switch can benefit you if you use it to your power.
mm.
So hopefully that could be one fun, intellectual, good side of Gemini.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. I think that Geminis are very flexible and adaptable even in their behavior, especially socially. So that makes sense. They can definitely show us how to move between different environments and adapt to each one, not just in the words that we speak, for example, but also in like the way
Mhm.
that, especially with the sun and Gemini, the way that we carry ourselves, and that like very literally being able to bring a different energy or a different presence to a different place, like depending on the vibe. Um, and yeah, I think that there's also and this is probably one of the most common like commonly spoken about traits of Gemini is they're curious as well. Like they're very curious individuals. And so I think that what's neat about that is I have met other Geminis as well as you, obviously, but I can see when they're doing this that there is a genuine interest as well in like who they're meeting. Like, sure, they might be able to adapt to these situations. And in a way, yes, it is, oh, I'm adapting to this because it will serve me best. But also, like, they're engaged, they're asking questions, they're genuinely curious as well about, like, okay, I had to shift it. I'm shifting into this character, not character, but you know what I mean, this energy. And now I'm speaking to this type of person, but they're still very engaged and genuinely part of that conversation and trying to learn. And then maybe they're at a party and they shift and they're over here talking to this group of people, and it requires a different energy. It's a different conversation, but they're still there. They're still present. They're having the conversation, and they're very curious about that. And then yeah, you might jump to something else. But I think that's a really great quality to have, and it's especially beneficial when it comes to navigating social situations. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you, maybe this is not Gemini related, but I met
Yeah.
somebody who was double Scorpio apparently. Like he's a
Okay.
Scorpio sun and Scorpio either rising or moon. So when you have
Hmm.
a double sign, is that double trouble or like what does it mean to you if you're double Aquarius or whatever?
Yeah. So if you're a double of something in the big three or in any part of your chart, but say that you're a double, sure.
Can you even be three of the same signs?
You can.
Sun, moon, rising? Wow.
Yes. Yeah. I know a triple Cancer, a triple
Ooh,
Sag. Yeah. Like,
interesting.
yeah, it's interesting. I actually do know a triple I actually do know a triple Scorpio, actually.
Wow.
Um, so all that that means is if you're a double or a triple of anything, it just means that, yeah, there's going to be a dominance of that energy or that archetype in the way that you dominantly express yourself or in your needs or whatever placements they are. So say that you, for example, that it's a Scorpio sun and moon. The sun is our ego, our identity. It's how we express ourselves and differentiate ourselves from others. And our moon represents our inner needs, the things that are more internal that maybe other people don't see, like written all over our face or our expression, but we deep down have these needs. So if you have the sun and the moon in the same sign, then it means that both your conscious and unconscious parts of you direct themselves toward the same like goal, or they express themselves in the same way. Like how you express yourself and what you need are the same, which means there's like a doubling down of that energy and like a more potent
Mm.
expression or intensity of that energy. So you might, like, people might meet you and it might be very apparent that like, oh yeah, yeah, that's like Scorpio, like there's a lot of Scorpio here.
Mm.
um and so yeah, it just might be very dominant in the way that you navigate the world around you. um but all that to say that I do think that you can also have, no, like you could not have any doubles in your chart anywhere and you could still exhibit strong like Scorpio energy. Like let's say that you have a sun in Scorpio but nothing else in Scorpio, but you have like other planets that are in your eighth house, like 4 planets in your eighth house. Actually, I could give myself as an example for
Mm.
this. If you look at my chart in whole sign astrology, um I have only the North Node in Scorpio. but I have 4 planets in Sagittarius in my 8th house, which is the house that is correlated with Scorpio energy. So while I don't necessarily in my energy give Scorpio, a lot of the way that those planets express themselves is scorpionic in nature. But you might not know that like
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat, like because they're not in Scorpio, they're in Sagittarius. So I come off more as like a knowledge sharer or a truth, someone who wants to talk about stuff and share the knowledge and ask existential questions. Um, but then we have these conversations, right, where you find out, oh, like I play in the occult and like psychic astrology, this type of stuff. Like that's where I do my work. So yeah, you can also experience a doubling down of an energy even if it's not in those signs. But to answer your question, yes, it just means that there's more
Mm.
potency in that if you have a double or a triple.
Wow, interesting. What is
Yeah.
this triple Cancer and triple Scorpio like? Are they like super like potent in that signs?
So the triple Scorpio, I don't know well. We had met at an event that we had worked together, but I don't know this person well. I would say that there are elements of the person's energy that give Scorpio. They seem rather reserved and more cautious in the way that they
Mm.
approach things. But also in conversation, when we had met, it did seem like they were, like, once we kind of got to know each other a little bit, they seemed like were not interested in small talk. Let me just put it that way. And they were willing to kind of go deep fast there. But I do want to say that just because you're a Scorpio, sometimes that's not always what happens, because Scorpio can be so self-preservational. Sometimes they don't like small talk, but they might not always reveal all of this stuff about themselves if they don't know you. So I just did want to kind of point that out, that sometimes it doesn't always work that way. But yeah, this person started sharing quite deep things, and I was like, wow,
Mm.
that's pretty awesome. But it could have been the context, like I said, and how we met as well. And then the triple Cancer is interesting. Someone that I've known for a very long time, and this person is very yes, I think they would probably they would describe themselves, I'm sure, as very emotional
Mm.
and driven by their emotions. However, because they're all of these 3 planets fall in the first house. The first house is the natural ruler, or sorry, ruled by Aries. It's like Aries type of energy. And so this person is emotional and nurturing and all these things, sensitive like a Cancer, but they have a fire in them in the way that it's like shown to the world that can only be Aries. Like she is a go-getter. She is just out
Mm.
here. Like the minute she's got the feeling for something, boom, she's addressing it, attacking it, whatever it is. I don't mean that in a bad way, like attacking it in a good way. Um, but definitely can, I think, sometimes carry so much of that emotion that it can, well, when you navigate the world with that much emotion attached to you, and that's the lens that you see the world through, of course there will naturally be moments where it's not, it's kind of getting in your way, like when you're not able to see something logically, or like from a mental, like, or a more practical perspective, like a more grounded perspective. It can be very like confusing, because it's like I just feel this way, and then I act out from how I feel, and
Mm.
that's it, so sometimes there can be, okay, we need to pause, we need to just like regulate our emotions, and then just make sure that what we're about to do is what we want to be doing. um
Mm.
but I mean, both of these people are amazing people. I wasn't trying to say that as anything against
Yeah.
them, but just in general, how the energy could play itself out. There can just be like, you could navigate the world very strongly as a Cancer, but it's the notion of too much of a good thing or too much of one thing being out of balance, where it's so much water that that's the thing. Kind of like what you were
Mm.
saying about, you have this chart with a lot of air and fire, but like no water. Like there's an
Mm.
impact of that as well, where like you have no water, so you probably notice that, or maybe other people notice it when they're interacting with you, or something like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't share a lot of things with my parents or my family at all.
yeah.
Or if there's like a vulnerable thing, I get super uncomfortable, and my
Mm,
brother calls me a robot because
yeah.
I also never shared anyone that I've dated with my parents or family. I'm like, I don't want
Mm,
to share that unless it's somebody I'm gonna marry.
mm,
And my brother calls me weirdo because he's like, that's you're a robot.
uh-huh.
So I do get it. Like there's like
Yeah.
a weirdness when it comes to vulnerability and emotions with me. Like I get very uncomfortable, but I don't know why.
Mm,
So, it's like my body doesn't have a lot of water. And I did meditation one day, of deep meditation. Since I don't have a lot of emotions inside of me, how can I balance that? And it was during like a higher self meditation, and the guidance was to drink actual water
mm,
to help balance the emotions, which was interesting. I'm like, oh,
huh,
because I don't have a lot of emotions, actually drinking it can also help regulate the body as well.
mm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Cool.
I want to say, as a Gemini, I don't know if it's a Gemini thing, but this year I'm actually planning something very interesting, which you already know. I'm planning a huge birthday party that's going to be filmed. And I just got this idea and I was like, I need to
Mm,
do it. I always want to do it, but I never executed it. So this year I'm trying to execute it, have a big ass party where I invite a lot of people that I know. We're going to be filming it. We're going to be exposing things. Like there's going to be a lot of things going on. So yeah,
Yes.
that's a little like fun, crazy side of Gemini where I'm like, I'm gonna go and do this and
Yeah.
show everyone that yeah, you can manifest anything you want and don't wait.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, it's very on brand of you. Just be social, get it done, have
Yeah.
fun, don't take things too seriously. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I'm excited for you. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun.
It's gonna be a
Yeah.
fun Gemini season.
Yay. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you
Mm.
everyone for joining the episode of Gemini. Let me know what you guys have thought about today's episode, and if you guys are a Gemini, happy
Yes.
birthday!
Yay.
See you guys in the next, which is I think what is the next season?
Cancer.
Oh, Cancer
Cancer.
season.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you Cancer soon. Bye.
Yes. Bye.
And when the sun sets, you asking me to come through, kick it with you. Night turning to morning.